Alton Coleman. Date of birth November 6, 1955. Death executed by lethal injection in Ohio on April 26, 2002. Classification serial unaliver. Characteristics kidnappings, apes, armed robberies. Number of victims 8. Date of unalivings May through July 1984. Date of arrest July 20th, 1984. Victims profile Vernetta Wheat 9. Tamika Turks 7. Donna Williams 25. Virginia Temple and her daughter Rachel 9. Tony Story 15. Maureen Walters 44. A 77-year-old man. Method of unaliving strangulation. Location Indiana, Ohio, Illinois. Spouse Deborah Brown. Convictions federal kidnapping, Ohio. Aggravated unaliving 2 counts. Attempted aggravated unaliving. Aggravated robbery. Aggravated burglary, Illinois. Unaliving. Aggravated kidnapping. Armed robbery. Battery, Indiana. Unaliving. Attempted unaliving. Child moles station. Criminal penalty federal 20 years imprisonment, Ohio. Death, Illinois. Death, Indiana. Death. Details 8 victims. Okay. Alton Coleman was born on November 6, 1955, in Waukegan, Illinois. His mother worked 3 jobs and he lived with his 73-year-old grandmother. Alton was well known to local law enforcement, having been charged with axe crimes 6 times between 1973 and 1983. 2 of those cases were dismissed. Alton served 3 years in prison after pleading guilty to armed robbery in a 1973 case where he and an accomplice kidnapped and aped a woman, then stole 100 from her car. Alton was scheduled to go to trial in Illinois on charges of stealing from the ape of a 14-year-old girl when he fled and began his unaliving spree. In 1976, Alton was charged with 3 counts of deviated actual assault for aping 3 fellow inmates in jail. However, he was only convicted of battery and received 6 months sentence. Ugh. Alton was diagnosed with mixed personality disorder with probable antisocial, narcissistic, and obsessive features, with an additional diagnosis including ele- ele- epileptic spasms, psychosis, and borderline personality disorder. So I guess this goes, ow! Alton and his wife committed their first unaliving when they unalived 9-year-old Vernita Wheat from Kenosha, Wisconsin. After Alton had befriended her mother, Juanita Wheat, he abducted Vernita and took her to Waukegan on May 29th, 1984. Vernita's badly decomposed body was discovered on June 19th in an abandoned building 4 blocks from the apartment of Alton's grandmother. It was determined she had been aped and the cause of death was ligature strangulation. On May 34th, Alton befriended Robert Carpenter in Waukegan, and spent the night at his home. The next day, he borrowed Robert's car to go to the store and never returned. Indiana and Michigan. In June 1984, Alton and his wife encountered 2 young girls in Gary, Indiana, 9-year-old Annie Turks and her niece, 7-year-old Tammy Turks. Hmm. The couple actually assaulted the two children. Annie survived the violent attack, but Tamika did not. Her partially decomposed body was discovered on June 19th, the same day Donna Williams, a 25-year-old woman from Gary, disappeared. On July 11th, her decomposed body was discovered in Detroit, Michigan, about half a mile from where her car was found. She had been aped and unalived by ligature strangulation. On June 28th, Coleman and his wife entered the home of Palmer Jones and his wife, Marjorie, of Dearborn Heights, Michigan, who they beat severely. Alton ripped the telephone from their wall before stealing money and their car. Ohio. On July 5th, Alton and his wife arrived in Toledo, Ohio, where Alton befriended Virginia Temple and her mother of several children. After Temple stopped communicating with her relatives, police entered her home and found her young children alone and frightened. Temple and her eldest child, 9-year-old Rachel, have been strangled to death and left in a crawl space. On the same morning as the Temple unalivings, Coleman and his wife entered the home of Frank and Dorothy Dovendak in Toledo, who were bound with electrical cords. The couple stole the Dovendak's money and car, and Miss Dovendak's stolen watch was later found under another victim. Later that day, Alton and his wife visited the Dayton home of the Reverend Mildred Gay and his wife Catherine. The two stayed with the Gays and accompanied them to a religious service on July 9th. The next day, the Gays dropped off the couple in downtown Cincinnati. On July 12th, Tawny Story, a 15-year-old girl who lived in Cincinnati's Over the Run neighborhood, disappeared. Her body was discovered 8 days later. A bracelet had been stolen from the temples was found under Tawny's body. On the day of Tawny's disappearance, the FBI apprehended Alton to its uh, to 10 most wanted list as a special edition. The 11th most wanted, Alton was the 10th person since the ignition of the list in 1950 to merit such inclusion. Alton and his wife bicycled into Norwood on July 13th about 9:30 a.m. Less than 3 hours later, they drove away in a car belonging to Harry Walters, whom they left unconscious, and his wife Marlene, who was beaten to death. Harry Walters survived and later testified that he and his wife had met Alton and his wife to discuss their potential purchase of a camper, and that Alton attacked him with a wooden candlestick. The coroner found that Maureen had been bludgeoned about 25 times. Shreds of a broken soda bottle, which bore Alton's fingerprints, were found in the Walters' living room. The bloody prints, made by two pairs of shoes, were found in the basement, and Walters' red Plymouth Roulette money, jewelry, and shoes were stolen. Two bicycles, clothes, and shoes not belonging to the Walters have been left behind. Kentucky returned to Ohio, Illinois, and Indiana. 2 days later, the Plymouth was found abandoned in Kentucky, where Alton and Brown had kidnapped Olin Carmichael Jr., a college professor from Williamsburg, and drove back to Ohio with Carmichael locked in the trunk of his car. On July 17th, they abandoned this stolen vehicle in Dayton, and Carmichael, who was still locked in the trunk, was rescued by authorities. Coleman and his wife returned to the home of the Gays, accosting them with guns. Reverend Gay, who at the time recognized Alton as a wanted fugitive, asked, "Why you want to do us like that, like this?" Coleman responded, "I'm not going to kill you, but what the hell? We generally unalive them, and then we go." Coleman and his wife took their car and headed back toward Evanston, Illinois. Along the way, they stole another car in Indianapolis and unalived its owner, 75-year-old Gene Scott. They're leaving a trail behind. Oh my gosh. 3 days later, on July 20th, Coleman and his wife were arrested in Evanston. As they walked westward across an intersection, they passed immediately in front of a motorist who was from Coleman's neighborhood in Waukegan. The motorist drove north to a gas station and notified the police from a payphone. The couple were soon spotted sitting on portable bleachers in empty Mason Park. As two police sergeants approached Coleman, his wife was observed walking away toward rear of the park. Two others stopped his wife as she tried to exit the park, searched her, and found a gun in her purse. The pair were taken into custody without incident and transported to the Evanston police station, where both were identified by their fingerprints. As Alton was strip searched, a steak knife was found between two pairs of sweat socks he was wearing. A shopping bag full of verified T-shirts and caps was found in the couple's possession. Officers learned that the pair stopped every 3 to 4 blocks as they walked and changed shirts and caps. A week after their arrest, more than 50 law enforcement officials from 6 jurisdictions met to plan their strategy for persecuting Alton and his wife, seeking the death penalty for Alton and his wife. Michigan was quickly ruled out because it did not employ capital punishment. It was decided to give Ohio the first attempt at sentencing, with the U.S. Attorney stating, "We are convinced that prosecution in Ohio can most quickly and most likely result in swiftest imposition at the death penalty against Alton and his wife." The state of Ohio convicted Coleman and his wife, finding them guilty of ape and unaliving of Tawny Story in Cincinnati and Warren Walters in Norwood, but not for the unalivings of Virginia and Rachel Temple in Toledo. Coleman and his wife were both sentenced to death. Alton's case was sent to the U.S. Supreme Court several times between 1985 and 2002, but his numerous arguments that his conviction and death sentence were unconstitutional failed to sway the justice. However, Alton's death sentence in relation to the Stony killing was overturned in a separate proceeding. Despite this, Alton's death sentences Alton and his wife each sentenced to 20 years in prison for transporting their kidnapping victim, Oline Carmichael, across state line. On April 25th, 2002, the Ohio Supreme Court rejected claim by Coleman's attorney that the state, to accommodate the large number of victims and survivors who wanted to view the execution, would turn into a spectacle sport. So many victims and survivors of Alton's crimes were allowed to witness the execution, and prison officials had to step up and close the sacred viewing venue outside of the building. For his last McCorn ordered a well done filet mignon smothered with mushrooms, fried chicken. Okay. Before his execution, he released a letter apologizing for what he had done. On April 26, reciting Psalms 23, Alton was executed by lethal injection in the death chamber at a Southern Ohio Correctional Facility in Locustville. Reginald Wilkinson, director of the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation, said Alton had not directly expressed remorse for the unalivings, but that he admitted that he's done in his own convoluted way. Alton had received two death sentences from Ohio and one each from Illinois and Indiana. At the time of his execution, he was the only condemned person in the United States to have death sentences in three separate states.